Humanity, a very important, relevant issue. And for that, I invite on stage Smriti Irani ji, former Union Minister of Bharat, of course, a very eloquent speaker, a lady, of course, self-made lady who needs no introduction. And we are very, very happy to have her in our midst today for this next session. In fact, it's going to be, of course, a riveting conversation on next in technology for humanity. Let's welcome Smriti Irani with a warm round of applause. Thank you very much for being with us today. And this session, as I said earlier, is going to be moderated by Rishabh Gulati, Editor-in-Chief of NewsX. And the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Uday. Forgive me, I'm losing my voice through the course of the day. But we have a very interesting individual who's about to have one of the most interesting conversations with you that you probably heard all day, and we've had some of the best people speaking all day. Interesting individuals because she comes from a very rich life history, who has done some things which are worth reading for in a biography, hopefully very, very soon. Amazing stuff that has happened, and that life history has gone through so many levels. Humanity is going through a life history. We are calling it AI. We don't necessarily understand it. So, Smriti Irani, let me ask you this very interesting question. What does AI mean for gender?
I think one of the greatest fallacies that have been sold is that technology is agnostic to bias. As AI grows, one recognizes, realizes, and many people monetize the fact that technology has created certain schisms, certain gaps, which have become opportunities for many. Those who have lived as thought leaders or as policymakers dedicated to equity, their decadal presumption was that equality will be assured. That is still a challenge. When you talk about the age, let's say, of AI, many people compute how much it'll add to a nation's GDP. Not much psychological computation has been done as to how it'll affect the psychology of consumerism. And from a gender perspective, if you look at global research, you will find that of everything that women earn, close to 80 to 90% of their own earnings goes into the health and education of their own families. Now, as technology enables consumerism, you will find today that research says 72% of purchasing decisions are affected by algorithms. One would presume that that algorithm would deepen your engagement as a woman on spends of education and health because you are genetically predisposed to it. But what happens is that technology, and the Journal of Psychology especially says that women through algorithms get 22% more spending on perishable consumerables and are 30% less likely to get algorithmically driven data sets or content which encourages them to invest. So I believe that there will be a tectonic shift in consumer behavior, especially with regards to gender, without a genuine understanding as to how psychologically that spend is being driven by that algorithm.
Okay, like I said, this is a very, very interesting concept. So we are saying that technology, AI, as I was talking to you right off stage, should be gender agnostic, right?
There is a presumption it should be.
It's a presumption made, yes, but it is not, obviously.
It isn't. In fact, at Berkeley Haas, there was a small research done by a lady called Genevieve Smith. They did a study across 133 AI systems, and they found that there was a gender bias in 44% of those systems. Now, why this research came about also is very unique. Genevieve Smith along with her husband, applied for a credit card in the US. She had the same money in the bank. They, in fact, had a joint account. Her credit score was better than the husband's, and her tax returns were as transparent as the husband's. She got credit 10% less than the husband, or 20% less. That drove her to start studying the technological effects of how women enhance or how the credit worthiness of women decreases over a period of time. So when this happened to her, her husband was very outraged, and he went on Twitter and he said, this is happening to people. And I think this is a comedy of errors, because he was in the field of technology helping code web-based applications. So he did a call out on Twitter to say, this has happened to our family. Steve Wozniak, I believe, who was, I think, party to one of the first devices or applications made by Apple. He went and responded and said, guess what, this happened to my wife also. So these are men of economic accomplishments who are talking about their partners who are equally or more so economically empowered, talking about how the algorithm, instead of acknowledging that emancipated woman, is decreasing her creditworthiness. So if I contextualize it, let's say to India, today women are likely to get 27% less credit with regards to their own deposits. And if you look at men, analytics will ensure that they get 52% of credit equivalence as compared to their deposits.
Okay, so let me understand this as a concept. So you are saying that because the algorithms are being driven by data sets, and the data sets will tell you that historically, because of bias, men have earned more, have had earning capacity because of the bias. And if the data set is trained on the bias, they will then lower credit score the woman forever.
They will enhance or they will sustain the bias. Everything we know as generative AI is basically the scraping of all information across the internet.
Yes.
Not only about all information, credit score, behavior. So if the entire internet scraping has got them this kind of an information set or data set on which they have built their enterprise, everybody else who's building applications on the basis of that enterprise, can you genuinely imagine them to get out of their enterprise, put on the equity lens and look at it differently?
So this is the same problem that AI can't do left hand because it has a right hand bias.
This is not only a money problem.
Right.
Anybody in the automobile industry today knows that internationally a lot of AI is being used to check safety measures. So if you look at those AI systems or those technology systems, you will find to see the impact of collision on the front driver's seat, they use a male body or the dynamics of a male body on an AI system. They do not anticipate a female driving and the impact on a female body. They do not anticipate a pregnant woman driving. And research now has showed that in the same scenario, because women at the secure testing drive phase itself are missing as a consideration in research, 44% women are more likely to be injured in the same kind of accident that a man may have, and 17% more are likely to die as compared to men.
Okay, so if it perpetuates bias, I mentioned left hand, right hand. You ask an AI imaging tool to come up with an image of a left hand person writing, they can't, because it is such a bias that all the images they're trained on are right handed. So when there can be a racial bias when it comes to the data scraping that you're doing.
Yes.
We've seen that as a problem.
Most facial recognition systems, 80% of them are based on either a white skin or a male.
Even fingerprint scanners.
Absolutely.
So the second then layer comes in is that if we human intervene, which is what happened very famously with one of the biggest companies, tech giants, that the AI then refused to, for example, show African American faces.
In fact,
in
the credit card reference that I gave you, the bank's algorithm refused to digitally correct the system. The bank had to manually correct the bias. So it's not only this one instance that you're talking about which had a racial bias. It's the computed even, I think, new firewall against any attempt to correct bias that even a bank of repute, and this is an open research which anybody can look at. So the presumption, like I said, that is it only about consumer behavior? Is it only about credit worthiness? Is it only about, let's say, for health innovations for every other person except women? The loss to global economy will be around $15 trillion. Now, many would wonder, what has that got to do with a nation's economy? So if you are a menopausal woman and in the workforce, let's say in the US, the computation of loss only for menopausal female working within a company and companies collated was $2 billion. So health innovation will never look at this issue and say this is a very, very genetic issue or gynecological issue with women. It has nothing to do with an economic impact. So one presumed, let's say a decade ago, that these are the risks that maybe AI or technology can red flag so that policymakers can work cohesively towards bridging those gaps.
You know, this is fascinating because if you take the example that if a company historically has had more male than female employees, when an AI system is trained to sort through CVs, it will by default say that you are more likely to pick a male employee, so therefore it sorts out more male employees and it perpetuates a gender bias. So obviously then, ma'am, there is a layer 2 to AI that needs to be evolved. What is that layer 2?
I think that one has to be also in some way accepting of the fact that as long as you just make the gender case for it, you will not see a policy shift. You have to economically evidence it for governments across the world to understand the economic loss. For instance, there is a report which computes the loss of female jobs because of automation and AI in the US. 79% of the jobs currently held, around 59 million women in the US, they will lose their jobs and they are most at risk to lose their job to automation. Now, imagine if these women are contributing to a family system predominantly on health and education. Can you imagine the economic loss to that community, that system, on those two verticals of spend? I think one of the greatest tragedies which has happened on the issue of gender is that we've always had a rights-based conversation on it. If there was an equal amount of conversation on the economic impact of not ensuring equity, we would have not seen the kind of bias which right now is hidden in a lot of rhetoric. But we would have not seen it if we had made an evidence-based economic case for it maybe a decade and a half ago.
Okay, so huge amount of effort is now being made to reach the goal of artificial general intelligence. And we are going to be devoting hundreds of billions of dollars in the compute and the hardware to get this done. If we do this, how do we, as people studying these matters and understanding these matters, what do we tell the tech guys? What do they need to do?
The tech guys are in pursuit of the new frontiers of technology. They are not in pursuit of equity and equality. So that's the wrong ask. Today, of the world's AI professionals, only 22% are women. 17% are in somewhat leadership positions. India, in fact, if you look at the numbers for 23-24, you'll be shocked. Generative AI courses, the surge in the number of women who want to understand generative AI is 720%. But generative AI courses which can help you become leaders in AI, that in India for women has gone up by 800%. Which means women understand that it's not only essential to be a consumer of AI, you have to lead in that field. Otherwise, there is not a lot of agency in just becoming a consumer. You don't want to be an enterprise which white labels and builds on an enterprise. You want to be an enterprise. But for you to be an enterprise, you need to understand the technology. So do not expect the technologists. They are chasing the next frontier of technology. For instance, I think Pranjal was here and he spoke about Davos. In Davos, everybody was talking about Anthropic, AI agents. You come out of Davos and in 3 days, you had DeepSeek. You are still recovering over DeepSeek. And suddenly Microsoft comes out with its quantum chip. So technology is rapidly changing, but that technology has been in making for a number of years. The issue is, who are the people who can tell technologists or companies that this is an aspect that you need to ensure is relevant enough when you develop technology? That, I think, is a lens that only policymakers and thought leaders can bring.
But can policy makers and thought leaders influence the data sets? Because the AIs are being trained to literally think for themselves on the basis of data sets.
Not to think about data sets. Not how data sets are right now. I don't think that many thought leaders or policy makers can even comprehend the alacrity with which data is now getting computed. Why I'm saying policymakers need to put a lens at it. Quantum computing, if you look at it from a financial market point of view, in the financial modeling, they'll talk about risk analysis. They'll compute, let's say, the time taken in terms of fractions for what you would normally take a century. They'll do it in, let's say, 2-3 hours or 10 hours. Now, if the model is not built to recognize these little fissures, then you'll have a problem. So while your frontiers of technology are shifting every day, or let's say every week, it is incumbent upon governments who are talking to tech giants to say, apart from safety, can you look at these financial models that are getting affected because people are getting left behind? For instance, technology predominantly speaks in English. There was a time when people thought that technology means you need to know how to code. Then comes a system like Claude, in which all you need to know to code is English. But how many people around the world speak English? How much of your knowledge systems, financial or for that matter scientific, gets lost because science does not speak that language to technology?
Or, well, technologists say that they can now bring up the best in translation. So, okay, I've short
For that, they will need to hire those. You have 435 languages which are rare in India.
Yes.
Which technologist has found those rare linguists?
Good point. And the rarest of them all is India's 5,000-year-old language, which we are yet to
You have
decipher.
16,000 dialects.
It's a conversation. Okay, I'm short on time. So now, what do you suggest? What do you suggest we do? As people, what should we do?
I think that one has to first recognize the bias to address it. I believe that this is the platform which for the first time, in fact, even enabled this conversation. I have not been on a platform in India where I've had this conversation. This conversation was had by me only at Davos. So I say, before you say what's next, ask whether the next that you ask for, is it bridging the gap or deepening fissures? And for that, I'm genuinely grateful to this platform for recognizing that while you're talking technology, while you're pushing towards new frontiers, you need to know technology was supposed to be an enabler and was supposed to leave no one behind. To leave half the population of the world behind can never be a solution. So before you say next, ask, who are we leaving behind?
All right, I think we've got our clip for technology then to process and put into some algorithm. Smriti Irani, as always, this was a pleasure. For people in the audience from other parts of the world, I've done 20,000 hours of television, and all of us grew up watching her on television, first as an actor, then of course as a minister, as a political leader, one of the most vibrant voices in the country. As always, ma'am, pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Smriti Irani ji, thank you for that amazing conversation. Rishabh, thank you so much. We're going to have you back on stage momentarily. All right, next up, we're going to have another enthralling, another insightful, wonderful conversation. Amongst us at this point in time is